I'm not faint of heart. 3 years as a firefighter in Seattle forged nerves of steel against bloody or deadly scenes. But after a severe knee injury, I had to discharge and find a lighter job. That's why I ended up here. Night shift security guard at St. Jude Children's Hospital, an old medical facility located in isolation in the northern suburbs. This job is basically boring. My duty is to patrol the dark corridors from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., checking door latches and ensuring no vagrants break in looking for drugs. The night shift at the Children's Hospital has a very distinct atmosphere. It's not exactly scary, but it carries a sadness, an indescribable heaviness. The colorful cartoon drawings on the wall under flickering neon lights look like faces smiling distortedly in the darkness. It all started on Tuesday night, my 4th week working here. It was exactly 2:47 a.m. I was sitting in the guard room, sipping a sip of cold coffee and gluing my eyes to surveillance camera. Screen number 4, 3rd floor, rehabilitation area. The whole floor was silent, only the hum of the air conditioner. Suddenly, the nurse call system control panel on the wall lit up. A steady beep, beep, echoed in the quiet space. A red light blinked at the position of room 304. I frowned. According to the patient list I received from the afternoon shift, the 3rd floor currently only has 4 occupied rooms, and room 304 is not among them. In fact, room 304 was sealed with yellow maintenance tape 2 weeks ago due to a water pipe leak incident. Dispatch station copy. This is ground floor security, I said into the radio, voice slightly hoarse from sleepiness. Room 304 just activated the nurse call. Is there any nurse on duty up there? It took a long time to get an answer. The crackle of electromagnetic waves sounded before the voice of Miss Miller, the night shift head nurse, came through. Her voice sounded tired, but there was something sharp, quite different from usual. Room 304 is empty. You don't need to check it. Probably just a short circuit. I'll report it to maintenance in the morning. But the ringing didn't stop. I retorted, eyes still fixed on the indicator light flashing frantically. It will wake up the children in the next room. Let me go up and turn it off manually. Don't, Miller interrupted immediately. I said, that room is empty. Just do your job. I turned off the radio, feeling a stream of cold air running down my spine. Miller's attitude was very strange. Normally, she is an extremely careful person, would never let an alarm ring continuously like that. I decided to go up and check it myself. Maybe it's that damn instinct of a firefighter. I can't ignore an alarm signal. When I stepped out of the elevator on the 3rd floor, the first smell that hit my nose was the strong smell of antiseptic, mixed with something sickeningly sweet like the smell of rotting fruit. The corridor stretched out before me, deep and murky. The fluorescent lights on the ceiling made an annoying humming sound. I headed towards room 304. The beep, beep. The sound got louder and louder, like the heartbeat of someone in panic. When only about 5 meters from the door, I stopped abruptly. The door to room 304 was not closed tight. It was slightly ajar, only about 2 knuckles wide. Inside the room was completely black, but from that crack, I swear I saw something move. A tiny white shadow, only about 1 meter high, glided past my line of sight. My hand tremblingly touched the flashlight handle at my side. My heart pounded in my chest, so hard I felt a sharp pain. I took a deep breath, trying to reassure myself that it was just a lost child or my imagination deceiving me. Hello? Is anyone in there? I spoke up, my voice trembling more than I thought. No answer. Only the death knell kept ringing steadily. I reached out and pushed the door gently. The hinge screeched dryly in the quiet space. My flashlight beam swept inside. The room was empty. The furniture had been cleared out, leaving only a rusty iron bed frame standing alone in the middle of the room. But the nurse call was still flashing red on the wall, and that was when I noticed the most terrible thing. The nurse call button was not short-circuited at all. It was lying on the ground, far from the wall socket, and just as my flashlight beam touched it, a tiny, pale, gaunt hand reached out from under the bed, grabbing the button as fast as lightning and dragging it into the darkness. The ringing stopped abruptly. The atmosphere in room 304 now thickened, cold to the point where I saw my breath turn into white mist in front of my face. In the first 3 seconds, my brain was completely paralyzed. My body, trained to react quickly to fires, was now frozen like a rock. I stood, rooted to the spot, flashlight beaming straight into the gaping empty space under the bed. Nothing there. No child. No bugs, only rolls of gray dust tumbling on the filthy floor. But I knew what I had just seen. A chill ran down my spine. Not the cold from temperature, but a piercing cold spreading from inside the spinal cord. I backed away, step by step, slowly and cautiously, eyes not daring to leave that pitch-black underbed space. When my heel touched the threshold, I swung my hand to slam the door shut as fast as possible. Bang! The sound echoed through the quiet corridor, loud enough to make me startle. I stood with my back against the wall, gasping for air like I had just run a marathon. My heart pounded against my eardrums, drowning out the hum of the fluorescent lights. I looked at the watch, 2:54 a.m. Only 7 minutes had passed since I left the duty room. Just a hallucination, I muttered, voice trembling. You lack sleep, you're tired, and that damn light bulb flickering makes you dizzy. I tried to reassure myself with the most logical arguments. Could it be a large sewer rat dragging the cord away? This old hospital is full of nooks and crannies for animals to hide. Right, definitely a rat. I turned to head towards the elevator to go down to the ground floor, then jumped. Miss Miller was standing right at the end of the hall, about 10 meters away from me. She stood motionless under the pale neon light, hands clasped tightly in front of her stomach. The pale blue nurse uniform looked more disheveled than usual. She wasn't looking at me, but staring at the door of room 304 behind my back. I told you not to check. Miller's voice rang out, flat, without emotion. I swallowed hard, throat dry. Miss Miller, I think there's an animal, or someone sneaking into that room. I saw the button being pulled under the bed. Miller slowly looked up at me. Under the deep, sunken dark circles, her eyes exuded a naked fear that she was trying to hide. She walked quickly towards me. The sound of rubber soles squeaking on the tiled floor sounded ear-piercing. She grabbed my arm, fingers digging in so hard I felt pain. Listen to me, she whispered, breath smelling of thick black coffee. You're new. They haven't told you the rules of the third floor. What rules? What the hell are you talking about? I brushed her hand away, feeling annoyed and confused. If there's a homeless person or a child hiding in there, we have to call the police or get them out. It was skin and bones, Miss Miller. I saw its hand. That's not a human, Miller hissed, eyes darting around as if afraid someone would hear. Why do you think that room was sealed? Why does none of us staff the nurse station on this floor after 2 a.m.? She took a deep breath, trying to regain composure, then continued with a trembling voice. 3 years ago, you didn't work here, so you don't know. There are things left behind. Bad energy, painful memories, call it whatever. But in room 304, it has rules. I stared at her, half believing, half doubting. Are you planning to tell me a ghost story at 3 a.m.? Miller didn't laugh. She pulled a crumpled yellow sticky note from her pocket, shoving it into my hand. This is no joke. If you want to keep your life, or at least keep your mind sane for work, then remember these 3 things carefully. I unfolded the paper under the dim corridor light. The handwriting was scrawled, ink pressed deep into the paper as if the writer used a lot of force. If the bell in room 304 rings, turn it off from the central system. Absolutely do not go there. If you hear laughter or crying behind the door, put on headphones and turn the music up to max volume. Most importantly, never look into the gap under the door. If you see it, it will also see you. I just looked in there, I stammered, the cold feeling from before rushing back. I opened the door. Miller's face went pale. She took a step back, eyes looking at me as if I were a dying terminal patient. You opened the door? She asked again, voice breaking. Did you step inside? Not really. I just stood at the threshold. She exhaled, a sigh of relief, but still full of anxiety. All right, still lucky. Listen, go down to duty on the ground floor tonight. Don't come up here anymore. I will lock this hallway door. Saying that, she turned and walked straight towards the stairs, looking hurried as if fleeing an invisible fire. I stood there alone in the long, deep corridor. The sticky note in my hand was damp with sweat. I wanted to mock her superstition, wanted to crumble the paper and throw it in the trash. But then, from behind my back, right at the door of room 304 that I had just closed tight, click. The sound of the doorknob turning slightly. Very soft, very slow, but distinct in the quiet space. I didn't dare turn my head. I ran straight towards the elevator, pressing the button continuously until the metal doors closed. obscuring that dark corridor. But when the elevator started going down, I realized a terrible thing. I had left the radio on the floor, right in front of room 304, when I panicked and backed away. And from the small speaker on the elevator ceiling, instead of soothing waiting music, I heard the crackling of static interference. Then a voice rang out, distorted, immature, like the voice of a child speaking through a thick layer of water. "Uncle, you forgot your toy." The elevator door opened at the ground floor with a cheerful ting, completely contrary to the storm of panic screaming in my head. I rushed out of the elevator cab, almost slipping on the polished tile floor. The bright light and the soft noise of the vending machine in the main hall made me calm down a bit. I ran straight to the security room, locking the door from the inside. My hand trembled so much that it took 3 tries to light the cigarette. I took a long drag, letting the acrid smoke soothe my lungs tightening from fear. "You're just imagining it," I told myself, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe someone hacked into the radio frequency. A freakish prank by the interns. To prove myself right, I sat down at the computer, logging into the hospital database management system. I needed to know exactly what happened to room 304. If I find a current patient's name or a specific repair schedule, all of Miss Miller's ghost stories will vanish. I typed room 304 zone C into the search bar. The screen displayed the line, status, inactive. I scrolled down to the stay history. The last data line made my blood run cold. Discharge date, 14102018. Reason, patient deceased. Note, room sealed pending technical incident investigation. No new patients assigned. From October 2018 to now is more than 5 years. That room has been abandoned for 5 whole years. There is no reason for anyone to be in there, and certainly no child could survive in a room with no electricity, no water, no food for so long. I shifted my eyes to camera screen number 4, the angle of the 3rd floor corridor where I just fled. The screen was grainy, black and white, but I could still clearly see that bleak scene. The door to room 304 was still shut tight, and lying forlornly in the middle of the corridor, about 2 meters from the door, was my black radio. It lay there silent, like a testament to my cowardice. "See? Told you," I whispered, trying to regain confidence. "There's no one. If someone took it, they would have picked it up already." But just as I was about to reach for the coffee cup, a movement on the screen made me freeze. On the silent camera screen, I saw the radio move by itself. It wasn't kicked away, nor blown by the wind. It slid slowly on the floor, bit by bit, jerkily, as if an invisible hand were dragging it towards room 304. I pressed my face close to the screen, holding my breath. The radio slid right up to the crack of room 304's door and stopped. Then, the room door slowly creaked open. Not wide open, but just wide enough for something to stick out. I swear, on my honor, I saw it through the grainy screen. A hand. No, it was too long and had too many joints to be a normal human hand. It was skinny, black as a burnt branch, with long, lanky fingers sticking out from the darkness inside the room. Those fingers snatched the radio. A sharp jerk. The radio disappeared into the darkness. The door slammed shut. I sat dead silent in the chair, cold sweat pouring out, soaking the back of my shirt. Right at that moment, the hospital's general PA system, the system only used for emergencies or fire alarms, suddenly emitted an ear-piercing crackle. And then, that child's voice rang out again, this time louder, clearer, echoing throughout the deserted hospital building at 3:15 a.m. "Security, uncle. Want to play hide and seek? I'm hiding very well." That sound didn't come from the speaker. It came from the spare radio I was wearing on my hip. My first reflex was pure panic. I snatched the spare radio hanging on my side, as if it were a venomous snake that had just bitten me, and threw it hard into the corner of the room. The radio hit the wall with a thud, then fell to the floor, cracking the plastic shell. Silence. That voice disappeared. I slumped down onto the chair, holding my head in my hands. My breathing was rapid, sounding like a blacksmith's bellows in the cramped room. Cold sweat streamed down my collar, sticky and uncomfortable. I can't quit right now. The main hospital door has been automatically locked since 11 p.m. My keycard is the only way in and out, but if I abandon my shift without a valid reason, I will lose my security license forever. I need money. I need this job. "Calm down, Jack," I muttered. trying to use reason to suppress the fear. You need to know what you are facing. I turned back to the computer screen, where the old medical record was still open. If the ghost or whatever the hell it is wants to play hide and seek, I need to know who my fellow player is. I clicked on the attachment named Internal Incident Report 102018. The lines of text appearing made my stomach churn. Patient, Thomas Tommy Evans. Age, 7. Diagnosis, acute pneumonia. Incident progression. On October 13, during a night shift short staff due to holidays, the patient was reported missing from the hospital bed. The duty nurses assumed the family had picked up the patient early without discharge procedures due to communication misunderstanding between shifts. Reality, the patient had hidden in the built-in wardrobe in room 304 to play hide and seek and accidentally got locked from the inside. Due to the room's excellent soundproofing and noise from the construction site next door, no one heard the cries for help. Result: body found after 36 hours. Cause of death: respiratory failure due to lack of oxygen and extreme panic. I felt nauseous. A 7-year-old child, suffocated in the dark, while nurses walked right outside, thinking the boy had gone home safely. The feeling of abandonment, the extreme fear as oxygen ran out. That resentful energy certainly cannot dissipate easily. So that's the reason, I whispered. It wants to play hide and seek, because that was the last thing it did while alive. Ring, ring, ring. The desk phone in the security room rang, tearing through my concentration. The sound was shrill, sharp, like a hammer striking my exposed nerves. I stared at the old gray desk phone. The screen displayed caller ID, room 304. My hand reached out, trembling. I knew I shouldn't answer. Miss Miller had warned, rule has shown. Absolutely do not acknowledge its existence. But the ringing didn't stop. It kept ringing, urgent and insistent. And then, I realized something unusual. On camera screen number 4, the door to room 304 was still closed. If someone is calling from inside the room, they must be inside. But the phone line to that room was cut at the same time the room was sealed 5 years ago, right? I swallowed saliva, picked up the receiver, and pressed it to my ear. Hello? Answering me was a prolonged crackle of static, sounding like wind whistling through a narrow door crack. Then, a voice rang out. Not the immature child's voice from before. This time, it was the voice of a woman. The voice was choked, sobbing, but distorted, as if coming from a broken cassette tape. Please, open the door for me. It's too dark. Mom, I can't breathe. That wasn't Tommy's voice. That was the voice of those who had heard it and been deceived by it. It's mimicking. What do you want? I screamed into the receiver, fear turning into anger. The other end was silent for a second. Then the voice changed abruptly, returning to the shrill child's voice. But this time it no longer had an innocent look. It contained an ancient malice. Have you found me yet? I'm coming down to you. Beep, beep, beep. Call disconnected. And right then, all lights in the security room went out. The camera screens also went black. Only the pale blue light from the computer power button remained. In the thick darkness, I heard a familiar sound. The sound of fingernails scratching lightly on a metal surface. Scritch. Scratch. It came from right outside the security room door I was sitting in. It had arrived. The security room was immersed in darkness, leaving only the faint blue light from the flickering computer monitor power button. The space was so silent that the sound of blood rushing in my ears sounded like a waterfall. Scritch, scratch, scritch. The scratching outside the iron door didn't stop. It didn't sound like animal claws. It was slow, deliberate, and heavy, like someone using bony fingers to press hard on the metal paint layer, deliberately creating the most ear-piercing sound possible to torture my nerves. I backed away, my back slamming into the filing cabinet behind. My hand fumbled in the dark, grabbing the rubber baton, a ridiculous weapon when facing something without flesh and bone, but its weight in my palm was the only thing keeping me from screaming out loud. Who's there? I have a weapon! I screamed, voice shattered. Answering me was a sudden silence. The scratching stopped completely, but then the doorknob started moving. It turned slowly to the left, then to the right. The deadbolt inside held the door tight, causing the knob to rattle violently. The door shuddered violently, as if a wild beast were throwing its whole body against it from outside. Bam, bam, bam. Dust from the ceiling fell onto my hair. I held my breath, eyes staring fixedly at the gap under the door. The light from the corridor outside was blocked. A long, dense black shadow was standing right in front of the door, and then a stench started creeping in. It slipped through the door crack, rushing straight into my nose. It was a disgusting mixture of strong sulfur, hospital antiseptic smell, and the moldy smell of a closed room without sunlight for a long time. The smell of an old wardrobe where air is stagnant, where Thomas breathed his last. I covered my nose with my hands, feeling bile rising in my throat. Opened the door. Uncle. That voice no longer came from the phone or the radio. It rang out from right on the other side of the door, right up close, separated from me by only a thin metal sheet. But this time, it was no longer a fake child's voice. It was deep, guttural, sounding like a grown man trying to distort his larynx to mimic a child. I bit my lip until it bled to keep from bursting into tears. I knew if I opened the door now, I would die, or worse than death. Suddenly, the black shadow at the foot of the door moved. It crouched down. An object was being pushed through the gap between the floor and the door. It was squeezed hard, scraping against the tile floor with a rustle. Something soft, wet. When that object slipped completely into the security room, footsteps outside thudded, running swiftly towards the stairs, absurdly fast. The lights in the room suddenly turned back on with the crackling pop of fluorescent tubes. I squinted because of the blinding light, then looked down at the floor. Lying forlornly less than a meter from my feet was a teddy bear. It was pitifully old. The brown fur had turned gray from dirt and mold. One plastic button eye was missing, leaving only a gaping socket with dangling threads. But the most terrible thing was its condition. The bear was soaking wet. A slimy, cloudy gray liquid was oozing from the bear's belly, spreading on the shiny floor. I used the tip of the baton to gently flip the bear over. On the back of the bear, someone had used a black marker to scrawl a line of text on the fabric, the handwriting shaky, but full of hatred. Your turn to hide. My heart beat so hard it hurt. This is a game. It doesn't just want to scare me. It is reenacting its own death. It wants me to hide, to feel the fear in the cramped darkness, just like it endured. I looked up at the surveillance camera screen that had just restarted. All screens displayed normal images, except camera number 7, the camera in the basement, the morgue and old storage area. There, the elevator door was wide open, and I saw wet, tiny footprints imprinted on the concrete floor, leading straight into the darkness of the storage. It didn't go up to the 3rd floor. It went down to the basement, and the spare key to open the main emergency exit to the parking lot is in the locker in the basement duty room. I'm trapped. I cannot stay in the security room. That is the only thing my brain can process right now. This room, once the safest fortress, now felt like a glass coffin. The stench from the soaking wet teddy bear was rising strongly, clinging to my nasal mucous membranes, making me nauseous. The words, "your turn to hide," seemed to be dancing before my eyes. If I stay here, it will come back. And this time, that flimsy iron door won't hold it. I need to get out. But the hospital's magnetic door system was disabled when the power went out earlier. To open the emergency exit in the main hall, I need the spare mechanical key, master key. And ironically, according to the damn safety procedure of this archaic hospital, that bunch of keys is kept in a safe in the facility's management room, in the basement, where I just saw those wet footprints walking in. Before leaving, I need to know what I am facing. My hand tremblingly moved the mouse, rewinding the footage of camera number 7, the corridor area leading to the basement elevator. I pressed play. The time on the recording showed 3:18 a.m. The elevator door opened. No one stepped out. For the first 5 seconds, the corridor was empty. But then, I saw it. It didn't walk like a human. It crawled out from the elevator ceiling. A skinny black shadow, limbs abnormally long, clinging to the ceiling like a giant lizard. It crawled upside down on the ceiling, head rotated 180 degrees towards the ground, messy hair covering its face. The way it moved made me chill to the bone. Its joints jerked, twisting at unbelievable angles. Crack, crack. I imagined the sound of bones breaking every time it moved a limb. It crawled terribly fast, gliding past the camera lens in a split second, rushing straight into the darkness of the basement. That isn't Thomas. That isn't a 7-year-old child. It is a monster wearing the distorted form of a child. I turned off the screen, shoved the flashlight into my pocket, hand gripping the baton tightly. I knew this weapon was useless, but it was the only thing that helped my hands stop shaking. I opened the security room door. The ground floor corridor was eerily silent. The dim red emergency light cast on the stark white walls, turning the space into a slaughterhouse of light and shadow. Rule #2. If you hear laughter, put on headphones. I don't have headphones. I only have ears straining to the limit to listen for every movement. I tiptoed towards the east emergency stairwell. The elevator is a death trap. I will never step into it again. The stairwell leads straight down to the basement. When I placed my hand on the stairwell door handle, I felt a stream of freezing cold air radiating from the metal, cold as a boulder. I pushed the door. The rusty hinge screeched an ear-piercing sound echoing in the narrow space of the stairwell. Clack, clack, clack. The sound rang out from below. Not footsteps, but a tapping sound. Someone or something was using a hard object to tap on the iron handrail. I stopped dead at the ground floor landing, looking down into the pitch-black stairwell shaft. My flashlight beam cut a trembling streak of light downwards. "Is anyone down there?" I whispered, stupidly, by instinct. The tapping stopped. Then, a voice rang out, echoing from the cold concrete walls. This time, it didn't come from the radio, nor from the phone. It was a real physical sound. 1, 2, 3. I'm starting to count. That voice rang out from right below my feet at the turn of the stairs leading to the basement. But the terrible thing was its tone. It didn't count with the excitement of a child playing a game. It counted with a monotonous, emotionless, cold voice, like a death sentence. 4, 5, 6. It is counting to give me time to run. It is following the rules of the game. I didn't dare breathe loud, tiptoeing backwards. I can't go down to the basement this way. It is waiting for me there. But just as I was about to turn and run back upstairs to find another way, I heard another sound. A wet sound. Plack, plack. I shined the flashlight onto the ceiling above my head. Right at the second floor landing, right above my head, that black shadow was clinging to the corner of the wall. It was looking down at me. Its eyes had no whites, just two deep black pits. Its mouth grinned wide to the ears, revealing jagged, pitch-black teeth. And it was smiling. 7, 8. You run too slow. It let itself drop. I didn't have time to think. It was pure survival reflex. When that black mass of flesh fell from the ceiling, aiming straight for where I was standing, I leaned back by instinct. My heel slipped on the edge of the iron stair-step. Gravity prevailed, and I fell backward, free-falling into the dark void of the stairwell leading to the basement. Bam! My back hit hard against the sharp concrete steps. I rolled like a sack of potatoes, tumbling continuously. Head, shoulder, hip, everything hurt. I only stopped when I slammed into the fire door at the bottom of the stairwell. Pain tore through my chest. I lay there for a few seconds, groaning, tasting the metallic blood in my mouth. I had bitten my tongue when falling, but I didn't have time to lie in pain. From the top of the stairs, where I just fell, a giggling sound rang out. Following that was the clattering sound of bones hitting metal. It is coming down. It's not walking. It is sliding down the handrail like a giant spider. 9, 10. Here I come. I scrambled up, ignoring the sharp pain in my left knee. The knee that once cost me my firefighting career. I pushed hard on the emergency exit bar. The heavy door groaned open, and I rushed into the basement corridor. Immediately, the cold hit. The initial outline I planned to write about the cold in room 304, but I was wrong. The cold wasn't in that patient room. The cold is here. The temperature in the basement must be down to freezing. My breath turned into thick clouds of smoke instantly. The layer of sweat on my back seemed to freeze, stinging the flesh. This is an air conditioning cold. This is the cold of death energy, of a place where life is rejected. I limped along the gray concrete corridor, heading towards the facilities management room at the end of the hall. I need the master key. That is my only exit ticket. On both sides of the corridor were doors leading to storage, laundry, and the morgue. I tried not to look at those frosted glass panes. I felt like hundreds of eyes were watching me from the darkness. Slap. Slap. The sound of wet, bare footsteps rang out behind me, getting closer. It's not running. It's playing. It knows I'm injured. I rushed to the facilities management room door. Locked. Of course it's locked. Damn it. Damn it. I cursed, hands trembling as I searched for my own keys to open this room. I have access to the facilities room, but the building's master key is in the safe inside. The slap. Slap. Sound was very close. Right behind my back, I could smell the overpowering stench, the smell of sewage water and rotting flesh. Click. The key turned. I rushed inside, slammed the door, and bolted the safety lock. I backed away, leaning against the desk, gasping. The room was immersed in darkness, with only red light from the fire alarm on the ceiling. Bam! A powerful impact shook the wooden door. Dust fell. Open the door. You hide too well. I don't like it. That voice was right outside. It scratched the wooden door. Scritch. Scratch. I turned my back to the door, trying to cover my ears to not hear that call. I turned on the flashlight, sweeping quickly around the room to find the safe containing the master key. There it is. The small iron safe mounted on the wall in the corner. But when my flashlight beam swept past that corner, I froze. On the wall right next to the safe, someone or something had clawed the paint to shreds. The scratches gouged deep into the plaster, exposing the bricks inside. But the scary thing was what lay mixed in those scratches. Fingernail fragments. Tiny fingernail fragments, with dried blood embedded tight in the wall. And below, on the floor, was a large puddle of water. Not leaking water. It was viscous, dark-colored under the flashlight. I approached the safe. It had been opened. The safe door was distorted, bent by an extraordinary force from the outside. And inside the safe, empty. No master key. Instead, lying forlornly inside was an old yellowed photo. The photo showed a boy smiling brightly, hugging a brown teddy bear. But the boy's face in the photo had been scratched out by someone with a sharp object, leaving only the grinning mouth. The line of text written in red ink scrawled on the back of the photo. Key is in my old place. Old place. Room 304. The wardrobe. It didn't chase me to catch me. It herded me down here, so I would realize that I cannot escape. I must go back to the beginning. I must go back to that room. Click. The bolt of the room door I was standing in automatically popped open. The door slowly creaked open. Darkness from the corridor rushed in, carrying bone-chilling cold and the distorted shape standing there, waiting for me. I prepared myself to die. When the maintenance room door opened, I gripped the baton tightly, ready for one last, hopeless strike. But death did not come the way I imagined. That creature stood blocking the exit. Under the red light flashing from the fire alarm system, I saw it clearer than ever. It wasn't a child, nor was it entirely a monster. It was like a distorted sketch of a human body. Its skin was pale, stretched tight against the bone, speckled with patches of green mold like old bread. But it didn't attack. It stood aside, pressing its elongated body against the wall to leave a narrow passage. Its spindly arm raised, a long broken index finger pointing straight towards the stairs. Its pitch-black mouth moved, emitting a hissing sound like leaking gas. Go. Back. To the old place. It is hurting me. I am not prey being hunted for meat. I am a toy that needs to be put back in the right place before the game ends. I have no other choice. The master key, my only chance of survival, is in room 304. I dashed past it. The strong smell of rot hit my face, making me gag, but I didn't dare stop. I ran like mad towards the stairs, ignoring the knee, screaming in pain after the fall earlier. The journey climbing back up to the third floor was torture. Every step was pain tearing through the thigh muscle. Behind my back, I didn't hear any footsteps chasing. Only a giggling sound echoed, bouncing off the concrete walls, sometimes near, sometimes far, as if to remind me that I'm never truly alone. Third floor. When I pushed the door to enter the familiar corridor, the atmosphere changed completely. The silence here was thick, heavy, like mercury. No more light humming, no more draft. The door to room 304 was wide open. Cold white moonlight from the window inside spilled out into the hallway, creating a silver streak cutting across the darkness. I swallowed, taking heavy steps towards the room. Survival instincts screamed at me to turn and run. Break the glass window and jump down, do anything but step in there. But cold reason reminded me, without the key, you will be stuck in this building forever with it. I stood at the threshold. Inside room 304, everything looked terrifyingly normal. The iron bed was empty, the bedside cabinet covered in dust. And there it was. Lying in the middle of the floor, right in front of the slightly open built-in wardrobe door, was the master key bunch. The metal reflected the moonlight, sparkling like an invitation. Okay, go in, get the key, run out. Don't look around, I muttered, sweat streaming into my burning eyes. I took a deep breath, walked quickly inside. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. I bent down, trembling hands snatching the freezing cold keys. The feel of solid metal in my hand brought a fragile ray of hope. I spun around to dash out. Bam! The hospital room door slammed shut right in front of my nose. So hard that the whole door frame shook violently, plaster falling onto my head. No! No! I screamed, rushing at the door, banging the handle. It was locked. Locked solid. Not a normal latch, but as if someone had welded it shut from the outside. And then, the moonlight from the window vanished. Not due to clouds, but because the old tattered curtains automatically pulled shut, completely blocking the only light source. Darkness swallowed me completely. An absolute dense darkness, causing me to lose orientation. I hurriedly turned on the flashlight, but it didn't light up. I tapped it against my palm. Useless. The battery was dead, or something in this room had drained its energy. I stood alone in the dark, back pressed tight against the locked door, breathing heavily. In that deadly silence, I heard a very small sound. Creak. The hinge sound of the built-in wardrobe behind my back. It was opening. I wanted to cover my ears, wanted to scream, but my throat choked. A stream of freezing breath blew onto the back of my neck, cold enough to numb my skin. And then, a whispering voice rang out, not from afar, but right next to my right ear, close enough that I could feel the wetness of lips touching my ear rim. Found you, Uncle. Before I could react, a tiny hand, cold as ice and hard as old roots, slipped over my shoulder, hugging my neck tight from behind. It wasn't in the closet. It was in the room with me from the start. I screamed, a desperate scream tearing my throat, but the hand squeezed my larynx tight, blocking all sound. My whole world spun and sank into a blood red. My lungs felt like they wanted to explode. The hand squeezing my neck didn't feel like human flesh and skin. It was hard and cold, like iron pliers wrapped in wet skin. I tried to inhale, but only a weak wheezing sound rang out in my throat. The veins on my temples pulsed continuously, and my vision began to narrow into a dark tunnel. It didn't kill me immediately. It was enjoying my hopeless, struggling, just like how a child enjoys crushing an insect. But it forgot one thing. What I was holding in my hand. In the struggle, my right hand still grasped the master key bunch tightly. It was a large bunch of keys, made of sharp-edged brass. I didn't think. I acted on frenzied survival instinct. I gathered all my remaining strength, swung my arm backward, stabbing the bunch of keys hard into where I guessed its arm was. Thwump. The feeling didn't resemble stabbing into flesh. It felt like plunging into a sack of moldy rice or a piece of rotten wood. An ear-piercing hiss rang out right next to my ear, a sound like steam escaping from a pressure cooker. The hand on my neck loosened in a split second due to the shock. I didn't miss that golden opportunity. I ducked down, escaping its embrace, and rolled on the floor, coughing violently, trying to gulp down every precious mouthful of air. My flashlight, after the impact when I fell, suddenly flashed back on. The light flickered, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, sweeping across the chaotic room, and the light stopped right in front of the built-in wardrobe. The wardrobe door was now wide open. I intended to spring up and run to the main door, but what I saw inside that wardrobe nailed me to the floor for a few seconds. Inside that cramped wardrobe where Thomas suffocated, the 4 wooden walls were covered in scratches. Thousands of scratches overlapping, deep, stained with the black of dry blood oxidized for 5 years. But the most terrifying thing was the line of text carved deep into the inside of the cabinet door. It wasn't written with a pen. It was carved by fingernails. The scrawled, desperate handwriting of a dying child. Ms. Miller heard me. Why didn't she open the door? The chill down my spine now no longer came from the ghost. It came from the brutal truth of the human heart. Miss Miller. Head nurse. The person who warned me not to come up here. The person who trembled when mentioning room 304. She didn't fear ghosts. She feared her own guilt. In 2018, she was on duty that night. She heard Thomas calling for help, the banging from inside the wardrobe. But because of laziness, thinking it was construction noise, or fear of breaking brake rules, she ignored it. She left a child to die slowly in the dark. You. A growl rang out from the corner of the room, pulling me back to reality. Under the flickering flashlight, that black shadow was huddled near the window. It was transforming, limbs elongating further, joints cracking, its head twisted, and the face. The face began to clearly show the distorted features of Thomas, but with hollowed-out eyes and a wide gaping mouth full of sharp teeth. It is furious. Because I saw its secret, it doesn't want to play anymore. It wants me to replace Miller's silence. I rushed towards the exit door. It shrieked terrifyingly and lunged forward, crawling on all fours fast like a giant spider, my hands shaking violently, inserting the master key into the lock. Click. Key slipped. Damn it! Damn it! Thud. Thud. Sound of its limbs hitting the floor right behind my back. I could feel the cold from its body blowing onto my neck. I gritted my teeth, held my wrist tight to stop shaking, and jammed the key in a second time. Click. Lock open. I threw the door open and dashed into the hallway, just as a long arm swiped through the empty space where my shoulder had just been. Its claws ripped through the back of my shirt, slashing a long burning line on my flesh. I slammed the door shut and used all my strength to turn the key from the outside. Bam! The thing inside threw its whole body against the door. The thick wooden door bulged out slightly, but the bolt held. I didn't wait for the second impact. I ran. I ran like I had never run in my life, rushing down the stairs, leaving behind the frantic screaming and desperate scratching echoing throughout the third floor. I don't remember clearly how I ran out of the main building. The memory of those last minutes was a mess of stumbling footsteps, painful, wheezing breath, and sheer terror that the thing was still right on my heels. I only truly sobered up when the freezing cold night breeze hit my face in the parking lot. The sallow streetlights, the distant traffic from the highway, those mundane things suddenly became strangely beautiful. They are proof that the real world still exists, that I haven't been swallowed into the dark hell of room 304. It was 3:42 a.m. I threw the master key bunch covered in my blood and sweat into the azalea bush near the guard gate. I didn't go back to the duty room to get personal items. The jacket, water bottle, even unpaid wages, leave it all there. Nothing is worth me stepping foot in that building one more time. But before getting in the car, I saw Miss Miller. She was standing by the glass window of the ground floor nurse station, looking out at the parking lot. Under the neon light, her face was pale, dark-circled, eyes wide and staring. She saw my tattered appearance, shirt torn at the back, blood soaking my shoulder, face bruised. I didn't scream, nor did I accuse her. I just looked straight into her eyes and moved my lips, clearly enough for her to read my lips through the glass. It knows you heard. I saw Miss Miller stumble back, hand covering her mouth as if about to vomit. The horror in her eyes wasn't concern for me. It was the fear of a sinner who just realized her sentence had been pronounced. I had locked the door to room 304, but I knew, with what I had seen, with hatred accumulated for 5 years, physical doors meant nothing anymore. I started the car and sped off, leaving St. Jude Children's Hospital receding into the darkness in the rearview mirror. That was 6 months ago. Currently, I am living in a small town 3 states away. I work at a lumber mill, noisy, dusty work, and most importantly, only day shifts. I surround myself with the sound of saws, hammers, and the boisterous laughter of workers. I need that noise to fill the void in my head. I tried to convince myself that I had escaped, that I survived that horrific night and left the monster and the hospital's guilty past behind. But some things don't let go that easily. The wound on my back, where its claws hit, healed after 2 weeks of high-dose antibiotics. The doctor said it was an infection caused by rusty metal, but he couldn't explain why the keloid scar had such a bizarre shape. It wasn't 3 parallel scratch lines. When looking in the mirror, the dark purple keloid scars on my flesh crisscrossed each other, forming a crude but clear character, a mark of ownership. And worse than the scar was the sleep. I no longer dare to sleep with lights off. My apartment is always bright as day, but even with light, I couldn't stop my hearing from overworking at exactly one moment. Every night, exactly at 3:12 a.m., the time I found the wet teddy bear, I wake up with a start. No alarm bells, No screaming, only the sound of drip, drip, dripping, like water leaking from the ceiling, or water running off a soaked body standing somewhere in the corner of my room. I checked the water pipes 100 times. Dry. I checked the roof. No leaks. But last night, when I woke up and looked into the bathroom mirror to wash my face awake, I realized something that made my heart stop. Steam clinging to the mirror surface. I live alone. I haven't turned on the hot water, but the bathroom mirror was opaque with steam, as if someone had just finished showering, and on that misty layer, a tiny hand had imprinted itself, wiping away the steam to reveal the reflection of my horrified face. It didn't stay at the hospital with Miss Miller, or perhaps it has already handled her, and now it has found me to play round 2. I think I'm going crazy. But the evidence lies right in my phone's voicemail, the thing I've listened to over and over until I memorized every breath. Yesterday morning, I received a missed call. The phone number displayed was the landline of the 3rd floor nurse station at St. Jude Hospital. Time of call, 3:15 a.m. I didn't dare call back. I opened the voicemail. At first it was a crackling static sound, like radio wave interference. Then came gasping, panting, full of panic. It was Miss Miller's voice. Jack, please pick up. It's not in the room anymore. The door is open. I'm sorry, Thomas. I didn't mean to. Her voice was cut off by a wet sound, like fresh meat being thrown hard against a wall. Then her scream rang out, heart-wrenching, so high-pitched that the phone microphone distorted. It's under the desk. It's under. Click. The scream died out. The silence lasted for 10 seconds. And then, that voice, the distorted child's voice I will never forget, rang out, whispering right into the receiver. She played terribly. Now it's your turn. The phone slipped from my hand, falling to the wooden floor. I was no longer alone. Right then, the lights in my apartment started flickering. Not a power failure. They turned off rhythmically. Off. On. Off. On. Like someone counting the beat. I huddled on the sofa, hand gripping the kitchen knife, my new hopeless defense weapon. The stench started creeping into the living room. Smell of stagnant water, mold, and strong sulfur. Creak! The closet door in the hallway, the closet I use for coats and shoes, opened automatically. Inside, there were no clothes. Inside was a deep black void, seemingly leading straight back to room 304 at the old hospital. And from that darkness, a small red rubber ball rolled out. It rolled slowly on the wooden floor, stopping right at my feet. On the ball was written in black marker, 10 seconds. It gave me 10 seconds to hide. I didn't wait for the second. I rushed into the bedroom, locked the door, and pushed the heavy dresser across the entrance. I crawled under the bed, covered my mouth tight, tears streaming down from fear. From outside in the living room, the counting started. Not a human voice. It was the sound of hundreds of fingernails tapping rhythmically on the wooden floor. Clack, clack, clack. I am writing these lines in the dark, under the bed, on my phone with the lowest screen brightness. Battery at 4%. 3 hours have passed. It is still out there. I can hear it walking in the living room, in the kitchen. The sound of wet footsteps squelching on the wooden floor. It opens the fridge, opens drawers, rummages through things. Occasionally, it stops in front of my bedroom door, scratching lightly on the wood. Scritch. Scratch. It knows I'm here. I know it knows. But it doesn't come in. It is prolonging the game. It wants me afraid, wants me exhausted, wants me to go mad before it actually finds me. Just like Thomas had to wait in that wardrobe, hoping someone would open the door, until hope turned into despair and death. I looked up the news online earlier, a short brief in the St. Jude suburban local paper. Head nurse, mysteriously missing during night shift. Police found large bloodstains at the station, but no body. Search ongoing. They will never find her. She is somewhere very cold, very dark, forever playing hide and seek with a vengeful child. And I am next. I don't know how much time I have left. Maybe when this phone battery dies, darkness will swallow me completely. Maybe when I fall asleep from exhaustion, I will wake up in that wardrobe in room 304. If you are reading this, consider it a final warning. Never take a night shift job at old hospitals. If you hear a nurse call from an empty room, never check it. And most importantly, if you see a wardrobe door slightly ajar in the night, don't close it. Don't look inside. Run. Run while you still can. Because right now, I hear the bolt of my bedroom door sliding open. The dresser blocking the door is being pushed aside gently as if it had no weight. And a whispering voice rang out, right next to the bed frame where I'm lying. "I see your leg, Uncle."